We're going to get started in just a moment, everyone. Just going to get the candidates mic'd up, and then we'll get going. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As you can see, we anticipated a huge crowd. We set up now the chairs are set up as a leftover from the High Holy Days. As you know, we are in the midst of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, we call them Yamin Noraim, the 10 days of repentance, and these High Holy Days. And so Friday night, this will be packed to the walls and beyond, but we're so glad that you fill it this evening. So thank you for coming. I'm Rabbi Dan Moskovitz. I'm the Senior Rabbi of Temple Sholom, and I want to welcome you and thank you for attending today's Vancouver Langara Jewish Community Election Town Hall. It's co-organized by Temple Sholom, our synagogue here, and CIJA, the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. As we begin, I want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations, and we're grateful to share this land. Judaism teaches us that voting is not just a civic duty. In fact, throughout Jewish history, many of our rabbis and sages, including this one, have framed voting as a mitzvah. Our tradition views us as working in partnership with God to create a better world. As we pray in the Aleinu prayer, the concluding prayer of our service, L'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai, the Torah calls upon us to pursue justice and to care for the stranger, the widow, the orphan, and to sustain our world to repair it. We're further taught to choose life so that you and your children may live. A portion of the Torah, a passage from Deuteronomy that is so important. We will read it Saturday morning in synagogues all over the world, in every synagogue, as part of our Yom Kippur service. Choosing life is, of course, a positive action, reminding us that we have to make choices to create the world that we want to live in. It doesn't just happen. In a democracy, in a democratic society, voting is one of the ways that we exercise that example and make such a choice. The prophet Jeremiah wrote during the exile of Babylon, see, I don't get to give a sermon, so I got to do it now, that we are to engage deeply in the community. I wrote this and it already feels long. We are to engage deeply in the communities where we find ourselves, building houses, putting down roots, and seeking the welfare of the city to which we have been exiled, and pray to God on its behalf, for in its prosperity we will prosper. And the Mishnah and the Talmud, the compendium of Jewish rabbinic and legal texts, takes even a further approach. And we read in Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, Rabbi Hillel admonishes, do not separate yourself from the community. Al tifrosh min hatzibur. In other words, we are to be engaged. And elsewhere we're taught a ruler is not to be appointed unless a community is first consulted. This deeply embedded ethic of political participation has guided Jews to enthusiastically participate in the democratic process over the ages, and it is why we are here tonight. As Jews, as citizens, as individuals deeply rooted in a tradition that values communal responsibility. Our presence here is not just a civic duty, but it is a fulfillment of a sacred obligation. It is a mitzvah. And we recognize that democracy, like any just system, flourishes when we show up, when we lend our voices, when we advocate for justice and compassion, principles embedded in our Torah and Talmudic teachings. By engaging in the democratic process, we honor our ancestors and contribute to that broader pursuit of tikkun olam, of repairing the world. That endeth the sermon. We do have limited time tonight, and I want to ensure that we have a meaningful conversation and that it can take place. But there are a few ground rules. Although I know this crowd, I think we can trust most of you. A couple of you, I'm not so sure, but anyhow. So I do want to set out those ground rules, though, so we all understand what the expectations are. As we expect the candidates will engage in thoughtful and respectful dialogue, I also ask that you, as the audience, represent the very best of our community to our guests tonight. I know that this has been a challenging time for our community, and justifiably, we may be feeling a lot of strong emotions. However, we have structured this evening to encourage dialogue instead of debate. Some of you may have political leanings. I assume that all of you do. But I expect that you will treat all of the candidates and each other with respect. I also ask that you not record anything tonight, that you keep your applause to only when I acknowledge the candidates at the beginning and when we thank them at the end of this evening. So please don't speak out or react to the candidates during the town hall. If you have comments or concerns, I am sure the candidates would love to spend some time talking about them with you after the event. Based on independent polling data released by Main Street Research and the Angus Reid Institute, the co-organizers of this town hall event invited candidates from the top 3 ranking political parties, and those parties are the Conservative Party of BC, the Green Party of BC, and BC New Democratic Party. Members of the organizing committee, including the teams at CIJA and Temple Sholom, have pre-selected questions. We considered those that you submitted as well, related to tonight's themes, and each theme will have a minimum of 3 questions. I'll do my best to keep the time, and that will be posed to the candidates. Those themes were chosen based on priorities of the Jewish community, of CIJA, and also of the rabbi. The themes are addressing anti-Semitism and hate, community safety, and supporting vulnerable persons in the community. I feel like Alex Trebek, I love a shalom. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to address each question. They have a timer in front of them. Regarding the speaking order, a different candidate will be given the opportunity each time to answer a question first, and I'll try to keep track of that also. We'll alternate after each question. The format is meant to be a discussion and for candidates to share their views. But candidates, remember, it's not a debate. So moving on now to our candidates, please allow me to introduce each of them and tell you a bit about them as provided by their campaign offices. And I'll ask you to wave as I call out your name. So Brian Burgett, Conservative Party of BC candidate. Brian is an economist and teaches at Langara College. Born in Switzerland, he made his home here in BC since 2008 and lives happily married to his wife. Brian spent years analyzing polls and politics for various media before finally jumping into the arena as a candidate. Welcome, Brian. Sunita Deer is the BC NDP candidate, and for the last 32 years, Sunita has been an integral part of South Vancouver and Marpole communities, with nearly 2 decades of service at Success, a nonprofit organization that supports newcomers on their settlement journey. Sunita has helped hundreds of people learn English and connect to their new communities here in BC. She strongly supports workers' rights in British Columbia and champions fair and equitable treatment for all. Welcome, Sunita. And Scotford Price is the Green Party of BC candidate. Scotford was born in Vancouver, and for over 15 years, Scotford has served guiding students through their journey in higher education, working closely at times with Langara community through connection and outreach programs between UBC and Langara College. Working with a large organization has built an understanding of the patience and determination it takes to foster welcome and meaningful change. It is with hope and determination that Scotford intends to bring an open mind and ear to you, the constituents of Vancouver Langara, and to bring forward your ideas to Victoria in the coming legislative session. Welcome, Scotford. There's one other person that I want to introduce in this room, and that is Zev Baum-Singer. Zev, if you'll stand up. Zev is, you can stand up a little longer, Zev, it's okay. Zev is a student at King David High School. Now you can sit down, it's okay. And I'm jealous of his hair, who started his school's current events club. He will be asking questions from his perspective as a youth leader throughout the evening, and this is Zev's congregation, so welcome back. Actually, Zev's here all the time, not just from his bar mitzvah. So with that as an introduction and out of the way, let's get right into it, if that's okay. And so we're going to start addressing our first theme, which is anti-Semitism and hate. Candidates, please note that the answering order for each topic will rotate during each category. Since the October 7 terrorist attacks committed by Hamas, Jewish communities across the province have become the targets of hate. According to the Vancouver Police Department, reports of anti-Semitic hate instances rose by 62% in 2003 compared to the previous year. And so our first question, and we'll start with you, Brian, and kind of work our way this way, if that's okay. According to Statistics Canada, Jewish community members were victims in 70% of all religious-motivated hate crimes, despite representing just 1% of the Canadian population. Hate aimed at our community has increased dramatically since October 7. And so what is your strategy for addressing hate aimed at the Vancouver Jewish community? Brian, you have 2 minutes, and I'll turn on your microphone, too.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I'm very proud to run for the Conservative Party of BC. My party has been standing with the Jewish community in Israel since October 7, well, since ever, but especially over the last year, we've been what I believe a strong ally to your community. If I'm completely honest with you, for myself, October 7 was such a wake-up call. I remember not thinking that there was much anti-Semitism in Canada. I was very naive before this. And then October 7 happened, and the very next day, we started getting such hateful messages on campuses, on the streets. We discovered some of our colleagues were incredibly against Israel or against the Jewish people. So my party has put out, and I think that was one of the first policies we put out there during the campaign, a comprehensive plan to fight anti-Semitism. And I'm very, very, very happy with this plan. So I will not list everything in this plan because I don't think I have time in 2 minutes, but we want to formally adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. We want to connect funding for universities we would remove funding for universities who don't ensure the safety of their students. We have seen very shameful behavior on campuses over the last year, including in my own college at Vancouver Langara, where I remember reporting to Nico and to others in the community that we had protests where we had signs saying only one solution, Intifada revolution, which I consider a hateful message. And yet, my college let it happen. So we're going to act on this. We're going to act on the definition. We're going to act on hate groups such as Samidun, or when we see the preacher in Victoria, what's his name, Yunus Katrada, I always forget his name. But we have people who have been spreading hate for the last year, and nothing has happened. So if you elect us, we will change this. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Sunita?
Thank you, Rabbi Dan. Thank you for the question and creating this space to discuss issues that are very important of the Jewish community here. As a neighbor in this community, I have witnessed the pain the Jewish community has experienced over the past year, particularly with the horror of October 7 attacks and the rise of anti-Semitism in our province. The memorial service I attended on Monday night has left me deeply emotional, and my heart goes out to all the victims of hate and terror. I have experienced hate and discrimination based on my faith, and I know how these scars never truly heal. Anti-Semitism, hate, discrimination, they have no place in British Columbia, and I stand with you. It's deeply important to me that every single person feels safe and welcome in our community, whether they're walking down the street, they're in school, or at workplace. Education is a powerful tool. Being a teacher myself, I cannot emphasize this enough, that's why we are implementing Holocaust education in our schools, and we are the first province in Canada to do that. Minister Singh has communicated clear expectations to all school districts to combat anti-Semitism and teach complex topics in a careful, respectful, and age-appropriate manner, ensuring that the students feel safe and welcome. Additionally, we have a new racist incident helpline available to people who are not comfortable going to the police, and allowing them to report incidents and receive support. That's my strategy.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Since you mentioned it, I'm just going to acknowledge Selena Robinson, who's here and championed that Holocaust education initiative for our province. Thank you, Selena, for all of your years of service. Scotford, the same question to you.
October 7th was, for many, a wake-up call that truly demonstrated what can happen if you don't remain vigilant. And I think to some extent, we all need to remain vigilant. There's only so much that government can do on these issues. It's important that people extend their awareness of their communities, connect and bond with their communities, and understand the world around them. We do have a number of ways to do that in our platform, including a shift of the community of policing with a focus on racialized and discriminatory violence, and also racialized and discriminatory talk. Basically, focusing on community policing and allowing the community members to connect more efficiently in these instances and in a way that they'll be received more quickly and understood from their perspective will help greatly in streamlining the solutions and finding perhaps a community solution to racialized violence or ethnic violence or religious intolerance. There's no room for that. There's no room for that anywhere. And through education and through community connections, I believe that we can address it in a meaningful way.
Thank you. Thank you all. We'll build on this theme, and Sunita, if you'll answer the next one to start with, and we'll just kind of go around in this sort of cycle here. So in 2022, the Premier then, John Horgan, endorsed the IRA definition, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition on anti-Semitism. So my first question, I guess, it's a two-parter. Are you aware of that definition of this important tool, and then the second part of that question is, what will you do to better align your party's work to combat hate with the IRA definition?
Thank you so much, Rabbi Dan. Thank you. Yes, I am aware that Premier John Horgan, in 2022, he endorsed the definition as part of the province's commitment to combating anti-Semitism and fostering an inclusive society. Anti-Semitism is included in the Anti-Racism Act to make it clear that fighting anti-Semitism is part of this work. However, one reality is that systemic racism looks different for different communities and changes over time. It can change over time. We all saw anti-Asian hate during the pandemic. It shifted dramatically towards Asian community. That's why we did not include specific definitions of different kinds of hate in the legislation, including the definition of anti-Semitism. By not locking definitions into legislation, we can remain flexible and ready to respond to different forms of hate over time, including anti-Semitism. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Scotford?
Not to be a negative Nancy, but why do you have the questions already written down?
Oh, no, I just wrote that based on
It says Q2, HRA definition of anti-Semitism.
Yes, it's in there though.
Anyway, I was under the impression we would not be getting the questions before this
No,
event.
these are not the questions.
Okay.
We did not send the
We
questions in
did not
advance.
send the questions. It's based on the topics.
Okay. All right. That aside, honestly, I did not hear what John Horgan's endorsement in 2022. I think it is a sound endorsement. I think that the community deserves to have clear definitions of what is and what is not hate, what is and what is not right for their community. I think it's tough, right? how do you engage, how do you prevent hate? It's a very broad topic. I think it's taught. And the way to prevent the teaching of hate is to teach love, is to teach a counter to hate, is to change the narrative. And I think that is possible. I remember myself, as a young man, visiting on a number of occasions the Jewish Community Center nearby. I have two formative memories of that space, one of which was more fun than the other, perhaps. A friend of mine had tickets to the screening of Super Dave Osborne, and I actually saw Super Dave and got to connect with the community. The other one was through my school. I was about 10 years old, and I met a man at the community center. His name was Peter Parker. He joked that he was not Spider-Man. At the time, I didn't know who Spider-Man was. But yeah, Peter Parker told me his story, and it was a very intense story for a 10-year-old to take. I've always been interested in history, and he showed me his tattoo. And it was very clear in that moment that hate is real. There are people out there who have bad ideas. There are people there who will take bad ideas and go as far as they can with it. And my entire life, I've been listening for dog whistles and various indications of hate. I'm very sensitive to it, and I think that is important to keep track of in government.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, thank you. This is the easiest question of the night for me. I can prepare. I already mentioned it in my first answer, so I might not even need the full 2 minutes. So, as I said already, my party has officially said we would officially adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, which hasn't been done in BC. So I know John Horgan endorsed it, but there has never been a formal vote on this in BC. I can't help but wonder why that is the case. I think this is, if I'm cynical, I think this is because the NDP wants to play both sides. They want to say they endorse the definition, but they want to leave the door open because, unfortunately, many people in the NDP have a problem with Israel and a problem of anti-Semitism. I think we've seen it over the last year. So my party is not between the two. We have clearly said we wanted to adopt it. Sunita mentioned that we want to keep a flexible definition of hate. I mean, I'm sure you all know what the definition of anti-Semitism, the IRA definition is. This is already a definition that allows for this flexibility. There is absolutely no valid reason not to adopt it. Every single Jewish organization and Jewish person I have met with over the last 9 months has told me about the importance of adopting this definition formally, and to then, not only we need to adopt it formally, we need to make sure to enforce it and to operate this in such a way that we can actually fight anti-Semitism. If we have learned anything over the last year, well, two things. We've learned that there was a lot more anti-Semitism than we believed, or at least for me. Maybe, I'm sure your community, you were aware of this. As I said, I was naive. And the second thing is, we don't all agree on what anti-Semitism is. So if we could at least agree on the definition that has been approved by many, many organizations out there, I think that would be a strong step forward.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll just remind the congregation, I'm never sure if the congregation hears what I'm saying from the Bema, but I can hear everything that you're saying. So I'll just ask you to keep your conversations down, please, because the whispering and everything, it can be distracting, so please.
Could you speak a little bit louder?
Sure.
If you would like, we do have assisted listening here, headphones at the door also, if you'd like to, if anybody would like them, not just yourself.
His chair is like right on the edge.
Oh, yeah, Scotford, we don't want to.
Living
Right.
on the edge.
Right. That would be bad.
Thank you.
Right.
Try my best, You're forgiven, James.
And Jamie forced the candidates to move closer together, so it's pieces at hand. Okay. So, Scott, for now that we've saved your life, we're going to ask your next question to you, and then for everyone else as well. So this year, as has been mentioned, the BC government passed the Anti-Racism Act, which commits the government to producing an action plan that will address harms of systemic racism, which includes specific mention of anti-Semitism. What will you do? What will you do to ensure that the Jewish community voices are included in the plan? And are there any specific items that you are hoping will be part of that action plan? And I'm just going to add to this question. We've heard a lot about your parties, and I understand that, but you as the candidate and a voice within your party, I would like to hear more about what specifically each of you will do as a voice within your party to address this and other issues?
Rabbi, verbatim on our piece of paper.
They're all here, though.
No, like the actual question, Q3, the exact question.
Okay, right here.
It's no, this is very broad.
No,
That's
but-
really specific.
No, these are
Action plan to combat
I
racism,
do a lot.
anti-Semitism.
Nico, do you want to speak to that?
I don't know.
There were no questions given, but I am a
That's exactly the
teacher.
question right there.
I'm one of the organizers here. Nico.
You have your notes too,
They're
Scott,
a piece of paper.
but I've been studying.
Sorry, I don't know how do you and your teams do town hall prep. I'm not part of your teams. As one of the organizers here, in charge of the integrity of this event, I can guarantee everyone, including you, that we as organizers did not give the questions to anybody. The questions were in the hands of my colleague David, myself, and the rabbi. And I vouch for all three of us. So there have been other debates, other town halls, but we don't provide the questions ahead of the town hall.
Focused
I
on.
want to make sure that I understand, but I'm telling you how I operate and how do I do my work as a person of integrity, right? And as a person, as a professional in this community. The questions were not provided to anybody ahead of time. I hope that clarifies any doubts anyone has here tonight.
Okay, so last I'll raise this issue.
Okay, thank you. And maybe it would be, Sunita, I'm going to get you another table so that we can
You can
create
come
some
to me.
separation.
I'm not going to accuse you of cheating. Just come with me.
It would help
And I'm
for
not
him
going
to
to
see
look at
them.
your notes.
I got it, Nico. I got it.
Yeah, come here.
I do a lot of work. I study a lot, Scott. I'm a teacher. I prep a lot.
I would love for the group to see your notes.
No, you're not going to see my notes now. I have data to support my words.
But they're the exact questions with Q lined up.
They're all here, though.
No, they're not.
You didn't do your homework, so that's not
That
my
is
fault.
not the issue.
Look
You
at
literally
this.
have the questions there.
Okay,
That's
well, let's hear the
data
answers. Let's hear the answers.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm not here to judge or create a big stir. Like, I was added to this race quite late. I'm just a normal human being who does a normal job normally. I don't want to cause a disruption like that. This is not a good place for it. I understand. I can only live with what I see and act with what I am seeing around me and doing. I do believe in justice. I do believe in doing what's right. I do believe in listening and hearing what communities have to say. And I do believe in trying to do everything as fairly as possible. Adam might disagree. We sometimes race, and it's pretty tough on the water. But generally speaking, I really do try to do my best by people. And I don't want to be a poor sport or anything like that. I just, yeah. I'll move on. Thank you so much for your patience and time.
Thank you. So I'm going to repeat the question,
Yep.
okay, because I would like to hear an answer from all of you. So this act, the Anti-Racism Act, commits the government to producing an action plan that will address harms to systemic racism and specifically mentions anti-Semitism. So my question, our question, is what will you do to ensure that our voices here in the Jewish community are part of that process and included in that plan? And are there any specific items that you're hoping will be part of that plan?
I mean, we're blessed in this riding to have such resources, such proximity to Jewish people, the Jewish cause, and a community that I have, for my entire life, felt very close to. And I think that is really what I would do best, is I would bring an open ear, I would bring time, and I would bring a lack of ideological judgment to the perspectives of my constituents. The only thing I will care about if I am elected is my constituents. I am here to represent you. And that is the most important thing to me. And frankly, I have not lived as a Jewish person. I don't have that lived experience. I don't know what your problems are day to day. I don't know what makes you scared or what makes you happy specifically. And I would love to know those things. I would love to be your representative on those things in Victoria. And I'd love to make positive change to the meaningful things that you think are important. because that's really the only way we can do it, is by starting conversations, connecting communities, and demanding of your representatives that they do the right thing by you as often as possible. And I'm pretty straight speaking. Honestly, UBC hates me sometimes because of this, but like, if I can't do something, I'll be like, this is why I can't do it, and that's what they don't like. They don't like the why. But I will give the why if I can. I will do my best. I will be honest to my constituents. And again, I'm not an ideologue. I will take whatever party BS, which is very unlikely from the Green Party, frankly, and set it aside for my people. And you would be my people.
Thank you. Sunita.
Thank you so much. So action plan to combat anti-Semitism. Thank you, Rabbi Dan. If we do not take action, things will not get done. So I firmly believe that we need to take action in terms of collecting data. So we are collecting anti-racism. We have Anti-Racism Data Act where we can collect personal information such as race, age, gender, and this data will help us identify and understand where individuals face barriers to access services. And additionally, we have Anti-Hate Community Fund, where we can provide funding to protect community associations and places of worship. So we have to ensure that people feel safe and confident in their environment. It's crucial work, and we'll be working very closely with communities to understand their unique needs and concerns. BC Prosecution Services introduced a new hate crime policy this year that includes the willful promotion of anti-Semitism, strengthening our efforts to combat this issue. We are committed to protect vulnerable groups through new robust hate crime legislation. If elected as your MLA, I will work with your community very closely to hear the concerns and take them to Victoria. Thank you so much.
Brian?
All right, so you ask us to be personal, so I will follow the direction, because I can keep listing our plan, but at some point you can just go online and read the PDF. So, but one part of our plan is we want to do an inquiry into some of the things that have happened with the BC Teacher Federation. And we've seen absolutely insane things happening in BC where either they refuse to fund anti-Semitism pedagogy, or we've seen teachers taking kids on a school trip and they ended up protesting for Hamas. So I don't know how those things happen. But let me give you a specific example of what I had to do over the last few months. So I teach at Langara College. We obviously unionize. And some people during our AGM have tried to bring forward motions that simply do not belong to an AGM of a union at the college. We're supposed to care about our working conditions, the students, and these type of things. Why would we have a motion about divesting from Israel? And we not only had this at the AGM of my union, we had such a motion, or two of those motions, at the AGM of FPSC, which is the Federation of Union. And, you know, it always makes me laugh.
Please be quiet. Please. Thank you.
Roy, you need to stop. Okay, yes, thank you. And so when we go to those events, usually those are people who will debate for hours about a comma missing into a motion, and they want to send it back to the subcommittee to think about it for the next 18 months. But whenever we had a motion about we need to divest from Israel, and I was like, what does it even mean? Nobody wanted to debate it. Everybody went to the mic and said, yeah, we need to do this. So sometimes anti-Semitism is very obvious. We have people burning flag downtown, and so unfortunately. Sometimes anti-Semitism is much more latent and insidious, and I had to deal with this over the last year.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Please, we'll hold our public applause till the end. I'm going to be conscious of time. I'm going to just ask what I think is a fairly straightforward yes or no question. So I'm going to just ask for a yes or no answer if I can, which is going a little bit off script, but Nico looks at me like, okay. Sorry? You have the mic. I do. It's my sanctuary. So the Anti-Racism Act that we've been talking about, There's a challenge for our community because several provincial government surveys, including the online consultation in that act, say that we can only identify Judaism as a religion rather than as an ethnicity or a cultural origin. So the question really is a yes or no. Will you commit to data collection practices that are more inclusive to the Jewish community? Brian?
Yes.
Sunita?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we can move on. You're on record. So I'm going to actually turn to Zev now because we've talked a lot about education, and Zev is living it and will be living it for a number of years, God willing, and wanting to attend school safely. And so, Zev, I'm going to turn the question to you.
Since the October 7th Hamas attack in Israel, slogans like "Globalize the Intifada," "From the river to the sea," or "By any means necessary," have been used in protests across Canada. These calls for civil violence towards the State of Israel, and by extension the Jewish people, have already resulted in hate crimes in Vancouver and an increase in antisemitism throughout Canada. The Vancouver Jewish community, by and large, believes that these slogans incite violence towards our institutions, friends, and family members. As a teenager who is hoping to attend a BC university next year, where these words are chanted on campus protests, I'm wondering if you believe these slogans are an incitement of violence, and if so, what will you do to make our Jewish students feel safer at our colleges and universities?
So I think because... Thank you, Zev. I think because the last question, which was a true or false or whatever, didn't give you much time to start. I think, Brian, it's your turn to start, if I have that correct.
Sure, why not? So thank you for the questions. I have already mentioned that we've had those hateful messages at my very own college. To be fair, my college has been very famous over the last year for some of our instructors, unfortunately, for this. I remember going to class one day, and we had this one message that was saying, only one solution, Intifada revolution, which, as I said before, I truly believe this is a call for violence. You know that the first two Intifadas were very violent for the Jewish people in Israel. So when I contacted my college, I contacted the president, vice president, I blasted an email to everybody. The first answer was, oh yes, you're right, we should absolutely remove it. And then I'm happy, I go back to the college the next day, the sign is there again, I message the same vice president, he's telling me, oh no, actually this is fine, this is covered by free speech. I disagree. Our free speech laws in Canada do not cover hate crime, and messages like this are just, anti-Semitism in disguise. And what I find very frustrating is the same people who are in power in my college or the government or elsewhere, who would tell me that saying from the river to the sea or one solution Intifada is fine because, it has different meaning. That's the excuse they gave me. Different people interpret it differently. But, if I wanted to organize a protest on campus and said all lives matter, they would not let me do it because by now we understand that if we say all lives matter, we're just being a jerk and we're just going against Black Lives Matter. We're just being obtuse and being racist. So I do not understand why the same people who understand that words have different meaning in different contexts cannot apply this to those sentences. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Sunita?
Yes. Thank you so much for this question. I have 2 children. I can understand that schools should be safe places. As a mother, I trust that schools and post-secondary education institutions should be safe places for my children, and it will break my heart to a million pieces if I found out that my children are not safe. So one thing, education. We need to educate people. People should understand that this kind of hate is not welcome. It's not welcome in our community, not in schools. Post-secondary institutions, they have their own laws and regulations, but as your MLA, and I would encourage all the government bodies to work. So our Minister of Post-Secondary Education, she also sent a draft email. She sent an email to all the post-secondary institutions to uphold those practices so students feel safe in those institutions. And I think local police should also be more proactive in protecting students at school, and free speech should not be integrated with hate preaching. I'm very much against that. I'm sorry that you have had that experience. And as your MLA, I will bring this forth. I will talk to the community, and I will bring this voice to legislation. Thank you.
Scofford?
So I've actually, again, as I mentioned before, long had a relationship with dog whistles. And from the river to the sea is not an unfamiliar one. I saw it at UBC, and I immediately recognized it as hate speech. I actually reported it upwards, and actually within a few days, so it was an escalation in the rhetoric of the protests that were there, and I noted it. It was a tone change from the other rhetoric that they had previously had in what was generally, I would characterize as a peaceful, although I would probably agree, anti-Semitic protest. With that being the case, the reporting, within a few days of that being reported up, it ended the protests. So the escalation of tone, the use of dog whistles, and the use of, I would say, lingual violence is not acceptable. And I think there are intelligent people out there, certainly at the schools that I work at, who recognize those things. And it's hard to make everything safe for everyone all the time, always. And the best way to do that is to integrate communities, is to have communities not see each other as violent rivals, but as friends who have maybe a disagreement. But there is action at high levels. It's slow, it's ponderous. It tries to be even-handed, and it will fail. And that is the reality of government, is that we can't be everywhere. We're not going to be in your bedrooms. We're not going to be in your closet lurking. We're going to be doing our best to create a system that is empathetic and that discourages violence at every turn. And honestly, I think that's all we can ask. I don't know if I could ask for more, because I don't want my freedoms to be trampled on just for, honestly, the actions of a few very bad people.
So the last question I have in this category, I'm going to again ask for specifics. And that is really about safety on campus, from K through 12 and including post-secondary education. So what measures, specific measures and policies, do you support or will you champion to create a safe environment for students and staff, K through 12, post-secondary education? What specific measures and policies will you support or promote or even author? And I think we are with you, Sunita.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned, education, educating everybody, talking to communities. We already have a security fund set up, but based on the community needs, we can get more money and ask for more money and bubble zones around schools. So we have already passed that legislation that protesters cannot come. I hope you guys are all familiar with bubble zones around schools and hospitals and places of worship, that it includes the sidewalk on both sides and the road in front of the school. So I don't think that there should be, protesters do not need to come near schools. So I am very much in favor of bubble zones, and I think that communities...
Did I hear you say you wanted to extend that to places of worship? You mentioned places of worship.
Is that not already in place?
No, it's not.
Okay. So we can talk about that as well with the communities. If it's needed, we can do that too. But schools and hospitals, I'm aware that, as Scott was saying, that it's not everybody who is spreading hate, it's action of few, and it's a sad thing that we have to create those bubble zones. And I would talk to municipal governments to provide more security if needed in communities that are feeling unsafe. So it should be at all levels of government.
Okay.
Thank you.
Scofford?
Hate is a plant with deep roots, and the key to removing hate is to uproot it. The BC Green Party actually has a very comprehensive policy involving several different ways to do that. I would focus right now immediately on the education side of things. We do plan to teach a number of events in history that would represent hate, and the Holocaust is included and focused on. Beyond that, generally speaking, hate is the tool of the desperate. And so if you think violent protests, just passing through the mind, the truckers' protests had a lot of anti-Semitic signs on them. Why? That's because hate begets hate. It's a message that's used as a political weapon. And that borders on issues with free speech, but more importantly, it's the language of the desperate. And that's where the Green Party, I think, will make the most strides on improving our collective society, is bringing more and more people out of poverty, bringing more people out of the desperate states of their lives. The way to do that, especially around Vancouver, is likely going to look like harm reduction, it's going to look like prevention, it's going to look like treatment, and it's going to look like enforcement. And that is what we're offering, is we're offering not just one pillar of drug policy, we're going to offer 4 pillars, the proper 4 pillars that were run in Portugal. And by reducing the harm caused by drugs and other related issues, we'll reduce the desperation, which will reduce the extremism that we are noticing bubble up in our society.
Thank you, Scott. Brian.
Thank you so much. I think it's pretty simple, honestly. We need consequences for failures. That's as simple as this. When I mentioned before, when we have a school trip of K-12 students who end up protesting for Hamas or against Israel, and we cannot even find which teacher did this. When we try to contact the school, they all give us the runaround. Like, oh, you need to talk to the principal, no, you need to talk to the district, no, you need to talk to the union. We need to have accountability. When UBC doesn't enforce their own rules to protect their own students, we need to have accountability. I was talking to a young woman about a month ago at the synagogue where the Federation, the campaign start was happening, and she was telling me this horror story, how when she was on campus, at some point she had to go and protect and barricade herself in a building. This is a normal. We don't need new law. We don't need new rules. We just need the current laws, and in particular the current rules of those institutions to be enforced. So as I mentioned before, one way to have this accountability is, it's unfortunate that this is one of the solutions, but through the money. The universities and colleges and schools receive a lot of public money. They should have independence, and we want them to be independent to some extent. But when they fail to protect their own students, there should be consequences about this. And so this is where leadership and a change of leadership would, I think, go a long way to address those issues.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to a related theme, because these are all related to each other. But the second theme that we have for this evening is community security. We have a few less questions in this category. Again, Alex Trebek, blessed memory. Public safety has become a widely discussed topic in this election. This is particularly concerning for our community because of our experiences after October 7. Institutions like this synagogue, the Jewish Community Center, and the Jewish Day School have experienced an increased police presence. I noted to the press just the other day that I don't know of any other faith tradition in all of Canada that requires 24-hour security for their worshipers to worship in their places of worship, except for the Jewish community. So in your view, what is the biggest issue related to public safety in Vancouver, and what would you do to address it? And I think we're here with you, Scott.
I mean, to be fairly specific, I think public safety in Vancouver is largely, in most people's eyes, a factor of the damage done to our society, and I would say largely from COVID, and the rebuilding of the social network, the social safety net that protects people from violence, that builds our community to strengthen together and to grow. It's funny that, as was mentioned earlier, there was a feeling of surprise that there was anti-Semitism in Canada when first encountered a year ago. And that's really a testament to that safety net, that people can come here and not realize that the bubbling tensions that simmer beneath different cultures, different identities, different religions, views, are still there. But we do our best to leave the old world behind. It doesn't always succeed, and it hasn't succeeded. And I think a lot of the reason why it hasn't succeeded more recently is because of the degeneration of our safety nets from the damage from COVID. And what that looks like is that looks like people not accessing resources. It looks like people not getting the help they need, and that help is there. There's so many volunteers, but they were gone for 2 years. And so that's why our social nets have degraded, and we need to rebuild them. We need to nurture them and nourish them. We need to make them robust. I've lived in the city all my life. There were always people addicted to drugs on the streets in the city. But it got better. By 2019, it was at the lowest rate it had ever been. And then we were hit by COVID, and it put everything back. We can get back there, but it takes determination, work, long-term thinking, sustaining projects over time, and allowing people to grow within the systems.
Brian?
Oh, thank you. There is no question that crime has been one of the main issues that people tell me they want to be addressed when I do not. Whether it's in Sunset or in Marpole, there is this feeling that one of the basic rights you had, one of the basic entitlements you had to walk safely down the street with your kids has been taken away from you. And I cannot completely disagree with this. I think what has been a little bit frustrating on this debate is some people in power, until very recently, would actually try to make you believe that that wasn't even an issue. You complain about a rise of crime, and they would tell you that you're wrong, everything is fine, crime has never been lower than now. And yet we keep hearing stories after stories of horrible crime happening out there. So, and I'm trying to not be too negative on the government because that's not the spirit of the night, but there is no question that on this issue, the NDP has failed greatly. And when we have a government who, instead of going after drug dealers, decide to become a drug dealer itself by giving so-called safe supply to people, by decriminalizing drugs, and then it's helping, we now know that those drug dens are helping in the source of many gang activities. I don't think this is helping. So we need to stop this. We need to have a stronger sentencing. We need to have stricter bail conditions. It's the same few people who commit a majority of the crime. We all have heard those stories of somebody committing a crime in the afternoon. They were arrested in the morning. So they got arrested in the morning, got put back on the streets, they committed another crime. We need to get these people out. Compassion, rehabilitation is nice, but at some point there are people who should just be taken out and to protect other people. And as I said, this is sad because you shouldn't have to worry about walking down the street with your kids going to Dairy Queen, that somehow there's gonna be somebody coming with a machete after you. And unfortunately, that's where we've been over the last few years.
Thank you. Sunita?
I don't agree that it's that bad, but yes, there is hate and we need to combat it. It's not as black and white as Brian is making it sound like, feel like. We are working on it. We have police who are protecting us. We have laws. We have BC Prosecution Services. We have a hate helpline where you can, 211, you can call and report any hate incidents that you have experienced. You don't have to go to police. We are collecting data. We have Anti-Racism Act. We are hiring more and more prosecutors. There will be consequences. We are working with VPD. Yes, I do understand we could do more, but there are issues. Peaceful protesters, if they're not being peaceful, police should handle it. And as an MLA, I will bring all these things and I will work very closely with Vancouver Police Department, with the mayor, with the city council to make sure that our communities feel safe. I am a mother, I have elderly parents, and they go out. I am fine. I don't think that they're getting attacked randomly. It's not as bad. We are protecting the communities. We will continue to do that. I do agree that we could do better, and that's what I'm committed to do. I will work with the communities who need more help. We have security funding. If a community feels that they don't have resources, we can provide resources. It's all about working together at the municipal level, at the federal level, at the provincial level. And as your MLA, I will be your voice. But I don't think I fear walking on the street and getting attacked. It's not as bad. There is law and order. We take hate very seriously, and it should be. And it should be taken more seriously. There is a lot of mental health support available.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, trying to get into some specifics. So currently the RCMP only has 2 people working in their hate crimes unit, and there are no standardized hate crime reporting systems province-wide. So what specific resources would you provide to enhance community safety against hate? And I think we are with you, Brian. If I have that correct.
So,
No, sorry, we're with you?
I think I just went, but I'm always happy to go.
Okay, we'll go. Well, she ended, so that would you be next, but go ahead, Brian.
okay,
We'll go there.
thank you.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned, we have put out a pretty comprehensive plan on crime and safety out there. We've been very vocal as a party over the last year about this issue. So I will simply list some of the items in our platform for now. I already mentioned that a lot of those issues are repeat offenders. And it's because bail conditions have been too loose. We need to make them a lot harder and strict so that we don't have those issues. We want to hire more sheriffs, and we want to hire more judges. We also want to introduce a new statutory court for minor offenses. One of the issues with our current justice system is sometimes it takes way too long to actually get this justice. So for minor crime, we would like to expedite the process. We want much harsher penalties for especially drug-related and gang-related activities. We need to have more resources for the police. But more than all of those items, I would like to just go back to something that is maybe not even a money issue or an item issue. It's about the general philosophy of who is in power. If we have people in power who are soft on crime, who don't take those things seriously, nothing will get better. Until recently, the NDP could not even recognize that there was a problem. Tonight, we're at least having that it's bad, but it's not as bad as I'm saying. So there is already an improvement. So I'm happy to see that they're joining us. Maybe if we had another election next month, they would completely be with us. But so keep that in mind. The people you have in power matter. And so far, in terms of the leadership on those issues, I think there has been a very big failure over the last few years.
Thank you. Sunita.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Dan. Thank you so much. Thank you for voicing your concerns. This matters so much. If we don't talk about these issues, we will not know. Our leaders will not know. Our government will not. So we have resources. Yes, we could do more. You are right. We need more police officers. And now we are collecting data. We have that Anti-Racism Act. Based on the data, the police department we collect data so we could provide resources. If we have any concerns, if you're having any challenges, we should report so they could look at the data and they could send more help. They could invest in more safety of the community. So I would say that let's work as a community. Let's voice our concerns. And we are collecting data. We have an Anti-Racism Act. We have that BC Prosecution Services. We are hiring more and more prosecutors. There's a helpline. Help is available. We should get help. We should voice our concerns. And I pray to God that there will be one day that we can get everybody feel safe and we don't have to worry about all these things. So I'm sorry, I'm being a preacher now. Thank you.
It's a good place to pray.
Yeah.
Scotford.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with my conservative friend over here. I think David Eby has gone quite far to eat the lunch of the Conservative Party in this election, and that is sad. Politicians should be able to stand up and hold to their ideals and fight against ideas that are wrong. That said, on police and structural reform, the Green Party actually has a great platform. I strongly suggest reading it. It's the best electoral platform you will read in this election. It's amazing. I love it. And I'm sounding like Donald Trump right now. It's not intentional, but it's good. And it actually covers this quite well. We have big plans for the RCMP. We would get rid of the RCMP and replace them with a local police force that is provincial. That's actually what the RCMP were until they became the RCMP. There was a provincial police force. It was so good the rest of the country stole it. It's time we get it back. Having a local police force means local officers, people from our communities that care about our issues, that know our past, our histories that are ours, our friends, our family. Not people coming in from Ontario or Alberta that don't know us, don't understand us, not from somewhere else. These are our people. And I think that's really important because policing is a community issue and it should focus on the community. It should be connected intimately with the community at every point, every level. And that looks like trust. That looks like knowing who your police officers are. That looks like having a relationship where you're not afraid of them all the time. They're not just giving you a speeding ticket every day or two. They're actually engaging with you in a meaningful way so that you can engage back with them. That's what safety looks like, is being able to speak to authority and not having a fear. And I think our policies and I have more to say, but I only have 10 seconds left. It's really detailed. I strongly recommend reading it. It's amazing.
Thank you. So we're going to move to our last category, and this is important, I think, for me to just articulate that your writing represents pretty much the sum total of the entire infrastructure of the Jewish community of Vancouver, certainly the vast majority of it. But a lot of Jews in this writing. There's not a lot of Jews in the province, but there's a lot of Jews in this writing. But we are not just single-issue voters. We are citizens of this society and of this community, and we work, we live, we eat here. And so, though we've spent a lot of time talking about very specific issues about Israel, or not Israel, excuse me, but anti-Semitism and hate crime and safety for our communities, our institutions, we are also concerned about other things. And it's very important that you not see us as just single-issue voters. To that point, we want to move into some of our more community-oriented, sort of vulnerable elements of our community issues. And I'm going to turn to Zev for the first question.
Thanks, Rod. The housing crisis has placed a huge burden on everyone, especially first-time homebuyers looking to start a new life in Vancouver. Though the provincial and municipal governments have developed strategies to increase density, the reality is that many Vancouverites are leaving our city and moving away. As a teenager, I increasingly wonder how young people like me will be able to live in Vancouver. The reality is that many are not leaving Vancouver by choice. I love our city and I want to have the opportunity to live here when I'm older. But the housing crisis makes me question whether this is possible. Are you satisfied with the housing progress being made in Vancouver currently? And if not, what would your plan be to support young people looking to buy their first home in the next 10 years? Thank you.
And I think Sunita.
Thank you so much, Zed. Thanks for this question. I'm a mother of 2 sons, and our younger son actually moved to the US. He was working for Microsoft. I was kind of happy that we have more room in the house, but he came back. Boys love Vancouver, so I don't blame you if you want to live in Vancouver. And I am part of this team that is working very hard to bring affordable housing. So we are one province who are building so many affordable homes for middle income families, and we have incentives. You can pay 40% of your first home and then pay the rest after. There's a very good plan. I can share details with you afterwards, but we take housing very seriously. By applying speculation tax, vacancy tax, we were able to free 20,000 houses that were available for rent. We are building more housing in UBC, student housing. We have rent caps in place, and we have so many housing projects for middle-income families that I think that future is looking bright, and we will continue to providing more affordable housing for families. And yes, please don't give up. And it is because of global inflation. We're all suffering because of that, but now things are getting better. Interest rates were high, our mortgage payments went up, but it's getting back to normal, so we should be okay. There is hope, and we will continue working towards affordability and bringing more affordable housing. Thank you so much.
Scofford.
I got bad news for you, kid. Housing is the #1 industry in Canada. Basically, everything runs off our housing industry, and there's a lot of interests who will never want to see housing prices go down. That would represent one of the largest losses of wealth any country can experience in the world. And so you have systems designed at every level. So the older can eat the young, the rich can eat the poor. And those systems are pretty much designed to keep the housing bubble as big as it can be, and it's going to keep it there as long as possible. It's very hard to break into this market. There are some ways to combat that. And those things, those ways, and this is not going to be popular with my close friend there, taxes, caps. Having it so that people that make more, pay more, will make it so that there's a cost to getting past that point. If a $3 million house incurs 0.4% higher taxes, that's a microscopic amount for someone who has a $3 million house, but that will create a soft cap, in a sense, on housing prices in this city. $3 million houses, those don't exist outside this city in this province, so it's pretty much a Vancouver-only policy. That's in our platform, and it is part of our costing in our platform. I have really bad news for Adam. $7 million houses, or a collection of $7 million houses, $7 million worth of houses. I'm just joking, Adam. I'm just teasing. You're just there. It's so easy.
I've been to Adam's house. It's not that big.
I'm sure he has a $7 million house. If he doesn't, I'll eat my hat. But yeah, we're going to tax that at 1.5%, which sucks. But it only sucks for about 4% of the population, less than that, 3.7% of the population, and it will generate almost $1 billion a year that we can put towards other things in this province. And that's the reality, is we've preferred housing. It's the most protected class of asset in this country, and that's why it's so valuable.
Thank you. Brian.
Yes, thank you. So there is no question that your generation has been completely forgotten by politicians, and for a very, very long time. And when I teach my students, they're 18, 19, 20 years old, they have no hope of owning anything in Vancouver. I always tell them, I'm just old enough to have been able to buy before it became unaffordable. And this is a monumental policy failure. That wasn't just 1, 2, but it's like 10 years, 20 years in the making. So, it's demand and supply, right? I'm an economist, I need to bring this up at some point. So what we have seen over the last few years is we have seen a massive increase in demand. We have grown, our population has grown in 3 years by as much as we usually grow in 10 years. It's not sustainable. We cannot follow this. We cannot build the infrastructure and the housing for this. So we need to control this. One of the plans of the NDP is to actually subsidize demand, which just makes it even worse. And then we need more supply. There is no question that we need to build more, but we need to actually build more. The NDP has been spending the last year talking a lot about housing, but what they have achieved is the number of housing starts in Vancouver is down by about 10%. So we're literally bidding less this year than last year, despite massive rezoning and forcing every city to rezone without any consultations. So our plan is to keep some of the zoning reforms, because there should be high density around transit. This high density should come with not only housing, but grocery stores, schools, and infrastructure. So we have an infrastructure fund. And then one key of the puzzle is to not do like what the Green Party just said, and to treat landlords and developers and people who can actually build housing as the enemy. When we go talk to developers, they all tell us that the extra taxes, the red tape, and all the problems with the city makes it almost impossible to build. But they want to just tax everybody that is half as successful in this life, and that's not going to work. As an economist, I can guarantee you we're not going to get more housing this way.
May I rebut?
Well, you're going to be you're going to start the next question, so you can use your time however you'd like.
I would love to rebut, because that's a debate.
Well, we're not doing a debate. We're doing a dialogue, and we have time for one more question. So I'll certainly permit you, because how am I going to stop you from using the time however you want? But I'd like to ask one more question, and I'm going to actually combine a few things here. So we find that families raising children and youth constantly in need of support. I have 3 children of my own, particularly in terms of mental health and other types of educational supports and medical supports as well. And we find that on the other end of the spectrum with seniors also, that there is deficiencies in our long-term care system, there's staffing shortages, there's inadequate recreation activities. We find in our healthcare system with the long wait times in our ERs and an inability to get access to GPs and family doctors. There is a lot of demand and not, it seems, a lot of access to these resources. So it's a broad question, but in the field of healthcare specifically, from, we could say as a rabbi, cradle to grave, from the very young to the very old, how will you increase access and increase resources to these populations in our province?
So I'm going to be really honest. The Conservative Party is just basically a rebrand of the worst elements of the Liberal Party. I call them the LibCons United, to unite the names. And they had power for 10 years, and the NDP had power for 17 years after them, and none of them addressed these issues. This is me, fangs bared because of the debate. I otherwise was trying to keep it as clean as possible. We do have plans to actually make health accessible. The biggest thing that is in the way of doctors treating you right now, at this moment, figuratively, is the fact that they're spending way too much time on administrative tasks. They're doing stuff that is not doctoring, and that's a waste of doctors and doctor time. We have 1/3 of all time of the doctors is being used on administrative tasks. 1/3. That is more than enough doctoring for everyone at all levels, all forms of doctors. Streamlining that is the fastest way to improve the efficiency of our economy. And anyone that says the Greens are not efficient, they're crazy. We do way more with way less than anyone else. Basically, what we're going to do is community health centers that are sizable, that include all of the resources you would need for your visit to the doctor. And there would be quick referrals because you'd have multiple specialists in the same location. Building one of these in every single riding in the province should give enough distribution and enough resources. We're also going to concentrate the sectors. So right now we're broken down into a bunch of different provincial health sectors. Each provincial health sector is fighting for its own resources against each other. We're basically outbidding ourselves. That is a waste of time and resources. We need to unify the provincial health sectors into one major health sector and the Indigenous Health Authority. I would love to speak more to Indigenous issues if that were possible, but that's not the place right here. But lots of resources if we are just more efficient with them, and the Green Party is the only party with a budget for all this.
Thank you, Scott. Brian.
Thank you. So I feel the question has 2 components, right? There is the healthcare and there is the long-term care. So I'm going to try to address both. So I'm going to start with the long-term care. We have released a platform called Restoring Dignity and Care for Seniors. And so one of the main elements of this platform is to provide better funding and better incentives for home care. A lot of seniors, they need care, but they would rather stay in their own home. They don't want to go to a long-term care home. So we want to boost the tax credits. We want to increase funding. We want to remove user fees for these type of situations. We want to actually build 5,000 more long-term care homes. Sorry, it's difficult for me to say, in the province. So I think that will go a long way in addressing those issues. I would like to pivot to the healthcare part, which affects seniors but affects everybody out there. We have a system in Canada, or in BC in particular, where our healthcare system is completely broken. Not only do we have a hard time finding family doctor, we have long wait lists for surgeries, we have incredibly long wait time at emergency rooms, and that's when emergency rooms are not even closed, like it's the case every other weekend in Abbotsford, for instance. So our platform, and I only have 45 seconds, so I cannot list all of it, but my party, I'm very, very proud to run for the Conservative Party, because we are maybe the first major party in Canada to say, hey, some countries in Europe do much better in their healthcare delivery system because they're not as ideological and dogmatic as we have been in Canada. The healthcare you receive, whether it's from a private or public clinic, as long as it's paid by the government through universal healthcare, that shouldn't matter. And we usually cannot talk about this in Canada because we're so afraid of the US, but we're not saying to look at the US. We're saying look at France, look at Switzerland, look at Germany. And so we want to do this to provide better care, but mostly more care out there.
Thank you, Brian. And Sunita.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing forth this issue. And I have facts to prove that we are using every single tool in the toolbox to overcome this crisis. We are still in a pandemic, and we handled the pandemic so well. BC had the least number of deaths in Canada because of COVID-19. I have senior parents. Our son is a doctor. I know how hard the doctors are working, and we are doing more. We have just hired 800 new family doctors. By 2025, our goal is to connect every single person with a family doctor. We have hired 6,500 nurse practitioners. Pharmacists can prescribe medications for common ailments, not anything major, but we are opening a new school, a med school in SFU, which was being stopped and criticized by the former Liberal government. And we are cutting the red tape around foreign educated nurses and doctors so they can start practicing here sooner. Diabetes medication is free for my dad, so we're helping seniors with that affordability crisis. A lot of pharmacare, a lot of medications are covered by pharmacare for seniors. I have 29 minutes, and I don't know if everybody is familiar with Better at Home program for seniors. We have this program where people like my father, who they don't want to go to a long-term facility, they can stay at home and use services with their daily chores, social meals, transportation, peer support, and we are investing $324 million. Healthcare should be accessible, it should be public, and we are keeping it that way.
Thank you, Sunita. It's my pleasure now to invite Nico to come up to help wrap up our evening. I'll just say before he does that, I want to thank you, all three of you, for coming here tonight, for your honesty, for your candor, for your answers, and I want to thank all of you as well. For the most part, you were pretty well behaved, no, as I say to my children.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you again. My name is Nico Slovinsky. I'm a vice president with the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, otherwise known as CIJA. Before I offer my closing remarks, I really want to thank the people that made this evening possible. First of all, Brian, Scottford, Sunita, a big thank you both for taking the time to being here. You could have been door knocking, you could have been anywhere else. You chose to be here with us tonight, and for putting your name forward to run for office. You're in the hot seat tonight, and we want to thank you for that. So a big round of applause to you. Thank you, Rabbi Dan. You did a masterful job, as a moderator, and thank you for hosting us in your space. Truth is that we owe a huge debt of gratitude to the entire team at Temple Sholom. So thank you also to Marielle, to Anna, to the security team, to everyone involved, to the volunteers from the Bitachon group. We couldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for the effort of many people that labored to make tonight happen. I know that our future is in good hands. Thank you, Zev. You did a masterful job, too. Your questions were thoughtful. You are the future of my community, and if my kids turn out like you, we are in good hands, so Jewish education works. Thank you. Just before I close, I want to also thank my colleague, David. Events like this really don't happen, don't materialize out of thin air. They take a lot of work and a lot of heavy lifting. And my colleague David, who's at the back over there, has been doing a lot of that heavy lifting to get us to tonight. So thank you, David, to you as well. To everyone in attendance here tonight, if I can ask one thing of you, our community is going through a critical time. We are faced with an increase in antisemitism. We have challenges to our safety in our streets. And we have an affordable housing that is even putting the youngest in our community without further future. We need access to good quality services. And we need our friends and family to feel safe. We're stronger when we stand together and when we get involved. Many of you have gotten involved already, volunteering, donating, volunteering for the campaign of your choice. But if there's one thing that I can ask you, is vote. Vote in advance. You can start voting tomorrow. From the 10 to the 13, and then from the 15 to the 16, and on election day on the 19th. Please vote. Make your voice heard. If you need any more information on how to vote, where to vote, if you haven't received your electoral card yet, you can visit the Elections BC website, www.elections.bc.ca, or you can visit the Jewish Community BC Elections Hub, www.cija.ca/BC Election Hub. To all of you for coming here tonight, thank you. Shana Tova, Gmar Tov. Thank you again to all the three of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. This concludes our evening. Please drive safely. I'm sure the candidates would love to take some time to speak with you if you'd like. And Gamar Chatima Tova.
You want to get a photo for you guys? That's what I was going to say.